Someone told me once, life is just trying not to be lonely.
It's like a bomb went off inside my mind, scattering all the pieces.
Every time I try to put the pieces together, something won't fit.
There's something on the edges. Someone, like a dark shadow, waiting for me. This face has everything that I ever did wrong written all over it.
You need to let me be what I'm meant to be. I'm not the one who dies. I'm the one who does the killing.
Hey, we're not dead. Here to talk about Punisher Season 2. A lot of people in this show are dead, and we'll talk about several of them. That does not include myself and Malik. You'd go full spoilers for this season. And, surprised, honestly, genuinely surprised, that no cancellation has been announced yet. It's been at least a week. Has it been a couple of weeks yet? I don't know. I feel like we were all waiting on pins and needles. Like, as soon as this season drops, they're gonna be like, oh, it's canceled. But of course,
it's been a little over a week. This show came out January 18th. Oh, this season dropped January 18th. It is now January 29th, and we still haven't gotten any news of cancellation. There's no doubt in my mind that we'll definitely get news of cancellation. I don't see them canceling like nearly half of all their other Netflix series and not canceling this.
Yeah. And I mean, of course it wouldn't happen like immediately because they still want people to watch this season, but surprisingly I haven't heard a lot of people talking about this one. Like the kind of people that you would generally expect to talk about whenever a movie.
Well, that's because a lot of people, viewership for this season dropped off considerably compared to last. It's still, according to most articles I've seen, it's still holding better than a lot of the sequel seasons for the Netflix shows have been. But the drop-off was still pretty substantial, and that's because, people just figured it'll be canceled, so why even bother furthering their investment?
Yeah. Although I am curious how we would find this out, because I'm still horribly confused as to how Netflix metrics work, but I'd like to know how many people potentially dropped off after giving it a couple episodes, because just getting into how I felt about it right now, I'm kind of lukewarm on this one. I feel like it was a pretty big step down from season 1, but granted, season 1 is a very, very, very high bar, and I think this is still a good show. But I have issues with it that I think are pretty big, and I could see someone maybe just not bothering to finish this season in a way I couldn't with last season. I know you liked it way better than I did, though.
That's very true. I wouldn't put it over season 1. I do think it is more of the show that people wanted it to be, though. I'll say that. I don't think... I know you're not going to agree with me on this, but I don't think the pacing is nearly as slow this season as it is first season. I think overall the story of season 1 is better, but just pacing wise, it does drag, and I do understand why just your average Joe has a problem getting through season 1 just because of how slow and methodical it is in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm not 100% disagree with that, because episode 1 of season 1, I maintain, is way too slow of a start even for these shows. I think just the first episode really negatively impacts the pacing of that season. I don't think the issue... I'm not even sure if season 2 necessarily has an issue with pacing. I think all of the beats that we hit are hit at a decent enough speed. I just think a lot of our time could be better served. I don't know. It's weird because the way I phrase it, it sounds like it's a pacing issue, but I don't think of it as one. I think of it as just... My thing with this season is all of the stuff with the protagonists is great. I love it. I love all of the good guys hanging out, doing stuff, making plans, carrying stuff out. It's all of the stuff with both of the villains that just doesn't grab me and seems kind of weird to me. And so that's not necessarily a pacing issue, but it is a sort of I'm not feeling how we're using our time issue, kind of.
I do agree with that to a degree. I don't think either of the villains this season work ultimately at all. I think, I can't remember his name, but the kind of religious zealot guy that is chasing both Frank and Amy throughout the course of the season. I think he has like a menacing enough presence, and I like how calm and monotone he is. He just, where we go with him at the end doesn't really match what we did with him, what little we did with him for the majority of the season. Like he's this Christian religious zealot that is somehow totally fine murdering people. We don't explore his psychology enough and like his belief system enough to where he's a Christian, but he's killing people. How does that go together? We don't get enough of him as a person.
Well, the thing is, and his name is John Pilgrim. That's sort of the name he gave himself. His real name is Robert. The thing with him and his whole like religiosity is that I think it's there. It could have been explored more, but the idea I get is that he works for these super rich like old person couple called the Schultzes, and they definitely don't have enough screen presence or like enough presence within the story for being like the big pulling strings characters in the end. But they have sort of convinced him that he has to take out Frank. It's like one last job. They're sort of preying on his religion. So they're like, this is what God wants you to do. It's the righteous thing to do. You take out this guy Frank for us. And then you can come back and be with your wife and your kids, and you can give up this whole life and just sort of, have the kind of calm life that you want.
Well, the thing that you're suggesting, he's too desensitized to killing throughout the whole season for me to buy any of what you're saying at all.
Like specifically that he wants a better life part, or that he has to be sort of like convinced to take out Frank part?
Or that he has to murder so many people to get there. A lot of them innocent people. And like he has no qualms with that at all. He's completely desensitized to it. And I don't think that really jives with what you're suggesting. And also, he doesn't seem like someone who is doing everything that he's doing so that he can get his children back. Like he seems like he has his agenda. Like when
well, it's not like he's trying to get it back. It's like they're waiting for him. His wife is dying. He wants to be there to see her off, or to help her.
But they also have his kids.
But they're like, it's not until the end that it becomes like they're holding them hostage, right? Like he thinks.
No, like it's revealed that that's like why he's been doing everything that he's doing. He kills Frank and Amy. He gets his kids back.
I got the impression that like they were sort of like pretending to be family friends, and they were just kind of watching over them, or that's the impression that he had for most of the show.
No, that's not. Like the implication is he does everything he's doing this season to get his kids back.
Yeah, I must have misread some of their scenes together then.
And
that doesn't work at all. I think that might. Yeah.
Earlier in the season, right? After that incredible bar fight, like Pilgrim comes there and he says, "This is the work of someone. This is a dog on someone's leash," and referring to Castle when he sees Castle in the security footage fighting and taking out all his men.
Yeah.
But he's also a dog on someone's leash. And doesn't act like that at all throughout the entire season, and then we get this reveal that, oh, he's doing all of this so that he can save his kids.
Yeah, he's got this whole master vibe about it that doesn't really gel with that motivation.
So,
And
go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna say, like, that's not even my main problem with him. Like, we're bringing up all this stuff, and I agree that those are issues. I could maybe be made to be fine with those, if not for the biggest issue, which is just that he's completely impersonal to Frank or Amy. Like, he's chasing Amy, and he's creating all these problems for her, but neither of them know who he is. Frank doesn't even meet him face to face or find out his name until the last episode.
Well, I don't need him to have a super personal relationship with Frank. We already have that with Jigsaw.
But I'd like them to, like, meet each other and, like, know each other and have an awareness of each other's presence beyond just Target and the guy who's chasing me for most of the show. Like, I'd like the stakes to be a little personal. Like, have them meet up somewhere in the middle of the season and they have a confrontation, maybe exchange some ideas, and then, at least for the rest of the show, they have an idea of who they're fighting against.
Ultimately, I don't think that matters as much as you're insisting that it should. Like, Frank, I don't know. I don't see any real reason for Frank to have a real back and forth with a guy who's trying to kill him and this girl that he develops a real affinity for.
I don't know. I think maybe it's just the fact that this is Frank's show. Almost every other character is connected to Frank in some way. And here we are spending loads and loads of screen time on this guy who's never met him before. They've never even been in a room together. He doesn't even know his name. It's weird to me.
Oh, he does know his name.
No, I mean Frank.
I know. He does know his name. Oh, you mean Frank as in Frank doesn't know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, all the villain stuff doesn't work at all, but that almost doesn't matter to me given John Bernthal's performance this season and literally everything with him. Like,
yeah.
He carries this season so strongly that all the gripes and issues that I'm bringing up with Pilgrim, and we haven't even talked that much about Jigsaw yet, and I can't wait to get into that, but yeah, he carries this season so strongly that I really don't even care about the issues this season.
Yeah, and see, I can't quite get there yet. So like, he carries the parts of the show that he's in, which of course is most of it, but there's also a lot of time when he's off screen and we're focusing on one of them, and it's a lot of screen time, so I can't quite just think of it as negligible.
That's fair enough. I've also spent more time with him as an actor, and I guess I like him a lot more than you do.
I mean, I don't know, don't get me wrong, like, I could watch John's character for, like, till the ends of the earth. It's just, again, like, so much time is not with him, so he can't be there to carry those scenes that he's not in, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't feel like the Jigsaw stuff, more so than the Pilgrim stuff, is more extraneous and takes up a lot of screen time, and ultimately... Okay, you know what, screw it. Let's just get into that. Jigsaw sucks. Nothing about him works. Yeah, I'm gonna be Eric right now. Jigsaw sucks.
Nah. Did he say that about the first season? I forget.
Well, Eric just wanted a gratuitous, violent shoot-'em-up show, and was bored with the first few episodes and just couldn't get into it, so he never even saw the first season. But yeah,
so, like, what do we want to first saw? Because there's kind of a lot of reasons why he doesn't work this season, I don't think.
Well, I want to get the obvious thing out of the way.
The makeup?
Yeah, his face. He doesn't look nearly as messed up as he should be, from what Frank did to him in the finale of season 1.
Right,
Scraping
and just
his face against that glass and smashing his face into the glass multiple times, and there's jagged whole shards of glass in his face, and he looks like a pretty boy. He still looks like a pretty boy with a few scars. And what's super irritating about that is we have all these scenes where people are like talking to him and making fun of him like he looks way more messed up than he actually does.
thank you. That's the whole thing. I think some people, prior to the season coming out, it's Netflix, it's on a budget, they're trying to be more grounded and realistic, like, he looks like Frankenstein's monster jigsaw face. But you kind of have to if you're going to go this route. Like, it's his main motivation is he doesn't know, he has no memory of, like, doing all of this bad stuff. He wants to know who did this to him, who messed up his face. He becomes super dependent on his psychiatrist girlfriend, whose name I had written down, but I forgot. And their relationship gets super intimate because, like, she is willing to be with him in spite of this, like, quote-unquote gruesome facial deformity he has, and he still looks conventionally attractive. Like, his whole thing this season is built around what happened to his face, and you can barely tell.
And like I view it, I know they play it like that, but I view it as she's able to be with him because she's kind of crazy too. Like, she's not all there.
Yeah, she's nuts. She likes to think that she can fix broken people because she herself is broken. And I don't know if I necessarily want to get into whether or not that's a little bit too far, like that she would even be a psychiatrist. If she's this crazy, I have a hard time believing she even has the job she has.
Well, she does have a good. Well, the best psychopaths do have good poker faces, and they are really good at lying.
Yeah. And, like, I think she's interesting. Like, for most reason, I'm kind of feeling what we're doing with her, but then I feel like it gets a little bit cheap when it's just like, I have a tragic backstory and it's really messed me up, and turns out I've been a completely broken shell of a person the whole time too. Like, I don't know, something about that felt off to me.
And the whole amnesia thing is just a dumb contrivance to begin with. It's almost never a good idea storytelling wise. It just, I don't know. It's just dumb. Like, we the audience know what he did. Frank knows what he did. Everyone else on the damn show knows what he did. So that's just not compelling to watch.
Well, I mean, I could see on the surface.
They try their damnedest to make him sympathetic, but none of that works because we know what a scumbag he is. We know that he didn't have an exact hand in the death of Frank's family, but he knew about it and didn't stop it and just let it happen.
Yeah, I can see what they think they're doing, because I think we do this with amnesia a lot, which is like, a person is their memories, and so if we know the actions that the person did and that makes them unsympathetic, but they have sort of been like mentally regressed to before they made that choice, are they now a sympathetic person? Can we explore that a little bit? And I think it works on paper. It's just, I think my bigger issue with it, beyond just doing the amnesia thing at all, is just that I feel like it was done so that we could pad out time. Because I think I'm going to take it a step further than most people usually take with the whole these shows have too many episodes thing. They gave Iron Fist Season 2 just 10 episodes instead of 13. I'm going to go even further. I think if we were still doing these, we need to maybe embrace like not being afraid to just do 5 or 6 episodes, or even just do movies. Because some of these plots are not meant to be 13, 10 plus hours long. They're just not.
I was getting Logan vibes and Last of Us vibes in the Frank and Amy relationship. And I thought to myself, this story would work better as a movie and would be a
Yeah.
lot more concise as a movie.
And like if it was shorter, you could just have Billy have his memories and he wants revenge against Frank and we have a whole conflict and it doesn't have to be sort of like spaced out with all this, because the only reason that we get rid of the memories like practically is so that that character can be sort of on timeout for several episodes while we deal with the Pilgrim and Amy stuff, so he's not like a distraction.
But he kind of is that for the
Yeah.
audience anyway.
Exactly. Like, because we can't just not have him in the show until he gets his memories back, because that would be weird. So we just have to keep cutting back to him. So just do a couple hours. Do like 5 or 6 hours or 2 or 3 hours. Have him get rid of the psychiatrist stuff, get rid of the memory stuff. Just have Punisher versus Jigsaw, and also maybe this other guy who's chasing this girl, and have that be just beginning, middle, end. Just do it.
I don't want to rewrite the show. I will say though, because we sound pretty negative about this. I really, really like this season a lot. And nearly all of that is Jon Bernthal and everything we do with the Punisher this season. But I like that we took a moment to like scale him back and like have him be a human being again. He meets Beth. They do sleep together after the first time they meet, but it doesn't feel just like a fling. They do genuinely like each other. There is genuinely a connection there, and of course, like that the one time he lets himself go, she ends up getting shot later in that bar fight, and like Frank kind of refuses to open himself up emotionally again for a lot of the season until like the midpoint with Amy, and is kind of able to find his humanity again. But I like that. I like that we start the season off in a place where Frank is mellow. He doesn't have a war to fight, and then all of a sudden he's just yanked back in.
Yeah, he's actually open to being a human being for once, and as soon as he, tries, it gets yanked out from under him, it blows up in his face. And I like that we never go back to her, or her kid. We
So
just
do
kind
I.
of have to let our mind, to Beth.
I'll tell you what I don't like though. I don't like that they leave it ambiguous as to whether or not Pilgrim killed her, because Pilgrim comes to the hospital later and asks her about Frank and where he is, and she plays it off. She tries her best to play it off like she doesn't know, but she's not a good liar, and it's clearly she does, and he knows that. And he's like, okay, well, he basically implies that if you're not gonna tell me, that I'm gonna have to make your son an orphan, more or less, is what Pilgrim says to her, or like implies. And we don't know if Pilgrim went through with that and killed her or not. That I don't like.
I don't mind the sense of ambiguity, just because I'll tell you what I would have done. I like the sense of ambiguity in the idea that if we get rid of that scene with Pilgrim, like we leave her in the hospital, we don't know what happens to her after that, what happens to her kid, whether or not one or both of them is like horribly scarred by this, whether she even survives whatever surgery was necessary to like get that bullet out of her. There's a lot, like, you can let your mind wander and think of like, how badly did one night with Frank Castle seriously screw up the life of this small family? The problem, I think, with having the Pilgrim scene afterwards is that it then makes her a plot point, and so that kind of adds a sense of, well, maybe we should know what happened to her after that, because that feels kind of like a loose end now instead of like intentionally ambiguous.
Most definitely. And like I like that we end with Frank in the classic trench coat and the machine guns mowing down gangsters. But I don't buy for a minute that Frank just forgets about Beth and doesn't go back down there to check on her and make sure she survived her surgery and that she and her kid are okay.
Oh, I do. I buy that he thinks that, like, he's too dangerous. He goes back to their lives. He's putting them in more, like,
No, no, no. Just I'm not even. He doesn't even have to have a conversation with her. Just go to the hospital and make sure she's still alive and that she survived the operation, and then maybe leave. But to just not even go back there at all.
I think, like, over the course of the season, he gets a bounty put on his head, and that's probably not going to be the last time that happens. I think, in his mind, even being in her general vicinity is creating problems for her. Like, I don't know. That seems like
I don't know
something
about that, man. I don't. I can't say I agree with that. I think Frank would at least need to know for himself what happened to her. He doesn't need to see her. He just needs to go down there and make sure that she survived the operation and she's fine. And then just leave.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I see what they were doing with her only being like she shows up in the beginning and then she doesn't show up again. Look at what Frank does to people even when he doesn't mean to. I like that, but there are issues with it. Also, you mentioned the trench coat. He should just... Why does he not wear that all the time? He should wear that coat all the time.
He was basically wearing that at the end of Daredevil Season 2, and then we see him with the classic he's actually rocking a full-on beard, but when he gets into, the more Punisher side of things in Season 1, he goes to the straight military buzz cut.
Yeah.
We don't get the cool classic comic book hair until this season.
Yeah, like, I don't think he should be wearing the what is it? The skull sort of armor thing without the coat. Like, those two pieces just complement each other so nicely. It's such a great Punisher costume, and we do it in, like, short bursts.
I do like that. As much as I love the trench coat for a lot of the action that we do in this show, it's not that practical that you'd have that heavy trench coat on in scenes when you're brawling with people.
Yeah, that's true. But when he's, like, primarily doing gun stuff, I think.
And we have to just take a minute and talk about all the crazy action in this season.
Okay, right. Let's talk about this because you were like, you mentioned specifically to the group, you were like, jaw on the floor, totally in love with the action scene at the end of episode 10, and I'm sorry to report that I didn't have that. I thought it was just okay.
I'm not talking about the action scene, although I did think it was pretty damn good. I'm talking about what Billy Russo does to Frank at the end of that episode. Like, because they talk about how Frank prides himself on making sure he doesn't, like, no friendly fire, like, doesn't hurt innocent people when he's taking down bad guys. Like, he's never killed anyone he deems as innocent. And Billy Russo, like, takes that away from him mentally by making him think he accidentally shoots through a room full of innocent girls.
Yeah, which is a smart plan, and, like, part of me, like, almost a sort of sick part of me wanted it to be that he actually shot, because it's like, well, of course, you fired a gun blindly into a room where you didn't know if there were people in it or not. Like, doing that just as a regular tactic, you're going to hit someone innocent eventually. And so we should explore, like, maybe Frank's just not being careful.
Well, that's the thing. Frank doesn't typically do that. That's not a typical thing. He generally knows who's in the room and who's not before he starts lighting his rounds off. But he's already in the warehouse with Billy and his goons, and it's just making the assumption that it's only Billy and, like, people who work for him there.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think him in the hospital and sort of like Karen and Amy and Madani all sort of like trying to work around him having this crisis and getting him out of the hospital. I think that was my favorite episode.
Yeah, some people have called Karen a little out of character in that episode, saying things like, "I'll drop my whole life to help you out." Um, how do you feel about that?
On the one hand, it is maybe a little bit weird to have to like put her in this position post Daredevil season 3, where she and Matt and Foggy have got their happy ending. They're finally in a place of like relative stability. And now she's going to throw her lot in with the least stable person she knows again. But I buy that she and Frank are close, that she's willing to do that. And also just that Karen is a naturally very impulsive person.
Um, and I love that they have such a strong bond and connection, and it's not romantic like at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
I love that we can have that in a show like this, and I feel like we don't get enough of that.
Yeah, to the point that I know some people were expecting it to get romantic after Daredevil season 2, and I didn't really think they were going to go that route, and I'm glad they didn't.
I'm also glad they did. And there's people that still ship them together coming out of this season.
Yeah, well, you know, shippers gonna ship.
Yeah.
I ship way too many fictional characters to hold that against them.
But yeah, I thought all that was great. I don't. Okay, so I really like the bond that Amy and Frank forged throughout the season. I don't like. It's not a problem. It's just a personal thing for me that really bothers me. It really started to irritate me early on, just how ungrateful she came across to Frank. Like, I know how crazy and insane his methods are, but he saved your life countless times, and you're still trying to run out on him, thinking that you know best. And I don't know. Like, she's a teenager. I know, like, they do that, but that started to get on my nerves.
I don't know, I think that got on my nerves the first couple episodes. And it's not even necessarily that she's ungrateful, because she is, but this is also a really tense situation. She doesn't really know who this guy is. He saved her life, but does that necessarily say that he's not some kind of crazy person? But my issue is more like, she's got kind of an attitude of not taking it seriously enough. And I think my interpretation, I think the show needed to be more clear about this, but both of those things, the ungratefulness and the sort of like overly casualness, go away over the course of the series, and she becomes way less irritating. I think that's a defense mechanism, and I think maybe we could have talked about it in those terms a little bit.
Okay, and that's how it comes across a little later. But yeah, that's my only gripe with her. Overall, though, I really like that that Frank comes to forge this bond with her, and it's not exactly. Well, I mean, I believe there's a line between them at some point where either she says or he says that she's around the age that his daughter would have been had she not been killed.
Yeah, like around her age, going to that high school that she like pretends to be a part of for a bit.
And in that way, it is kind of a Joel and Ellie relationship.
Yeah, like I come to really like her over the course of the season, and I really like the moment that like solidified their dynamic for me is when they go to check out that guy who takes like the dirty pictures of little girls, and Frank's about to kill him, and she stops and is like, "Would it make you feel better if we burn the place down?" And they just cut to them walking out of the building, and they set it on fire.
Yeah, that reminds me of another thing that I really like is we pull Frank back a couple times this season, where like he makes the choice not to kill people.
Yeah. Or like he has to be talked out of it, and it's like it's especially given sort of like where he's at mentally pretty much all the time, but especially like as we follow him, it's interesting to have him we still play him as fundamentally Frank is a smart guy. He knows how to play the long game. He's actually good at tactics. He's not just blindly killing people. When he sees an advantage to keeping someone alive, he will do it. And we do that with like the senator guy. And yeah, I don't know. I really like that. Like the biggest thing that I think this show, or just these shows, have sort of gotten people to realize about Frank Castle as a character is that he's a really, really smart person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's an exchange between him. Oh, it was, I think right after, well, a little later after, the scene where Frank and his friend Curtis show up at the trailer, and Amy tries to do that move that Frank taught her, but she screws it up, and Frank fires the gun right next to her face and scares the crap out of her, and she starts crying, and he goes off on her. That was a really powerful scene. Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah.
A little later, Frank goes to his wife's grave, and he comes back, and he says, "Yeah, I had a whole conversation with my wife, and I realized something. Like, I was always this way. It wasn't the death of my family that turned me into someone who's just willing to kill people without a second thought. That's just who I've always been. And my wife knew that, and she loved me anyway."
Hmm. Yeah. That whole thing was like, and just seeing him sitting there just silently, that was a whole, like, I really like that bit. Oh, and also the other big scene that I really liked between him and Amy was when she pulls off the move on one of those goons who's trying to get the bounty on them, and she shoots him, and he's like not dead yet. He's slowly dying on the floor, and she's like really messed up over it. She's like, "I killed him," and Frank comes over and he's like, "No, you just shot him." And he turns around and he shoots him dead. He's like, "I killed him." So he like takes the burden off of her, and it's like, that's perfect. That's great.
Yeah, and he says, "All his blood isn't worth a single one of your tears."
Yeah.
Just really powerful moments like that. That I don't know. I got a lot of enjoyment out of the season.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff here, and it's mostly with and Damian Curtis and a little bit Madani. I'm kind of iffy. How did you feel about Madani this season?
Well, I told you I kind of had with her what you had with her in season 1, where I'm like, she's not the best. First of all, she feels a lot more incompetent this season, and like, incompetent in the sense of like, he's going to keep visiting Billy Russo, even though like the whole case with him is done, and she's not helping herself at all, and she's making herself look like a crazy person. And we can't do what we do. Oh, there's significant stuff that we do in this season that we can't do without Madani. So I feel like that alone is the reason why we chose to keep her alive. But I don't know. I really hate those. I mean, I understand her being conflicted about Frank's methods, but it's really annoying that she begrudgingly agrees, and then as soon as she sees him torturing a guy, she eventually caves and tells him to stop. And then, and like, moments like that keep happening, and I'm like, are you on board or are you not?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't mind her, and the whole incompetent thing, it's less that she's incompetent and more that she's just laser focused on sort of like spiting Billy. And that bothered me for a while because it's just like, okay, lady, like, I understand he really messed you up, but, like, you're a professional. You kind of gotta let go. Other people will handle him. But as the season progresses, I kind of start to sympathize with her more as the show just hammers in, like, oh no, she's really messed up. Like, this is another one of those things where, because it's still taking place in a heightened reality, and we've seen people get shot and, like, sort of recover from bullet wounds and get back up and go back to business fairly often, you kind of forget that it is still a grounded enough reality where you get shot once, that's gonna mess up a person for life. She got shot in the head, and like one of my favorite things is like we cut from her uh in the meeting, the veterans meeting thing, to just her in slow motion getting shot in the head several times. It's like, this woman took a bullet to the skull. It makes sense that she's not alright. That she's just not all there after that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It just, I don't know. She was like 50-50 for me this season. There were scenes where she was fine,
Yeah.
and then other seasons where she was playing the whole I am mighty, holier than thou crap, even though she's definitely done some morally questionable things, and has called in Frank for help when it suits her, but the minute she gets squeamish, she caves and undermines what Frank is doing, and that's annoying.
Yeah, she's kind of like a way, way less nice Misty.
Yeah. Not nearly as endearing Misty. That's a good way to describe her.
Especially since we do pretty much the same thing, which is like in season 2, she's suffered a terrible injury, and that's like informing most of her decisions is a trauma from that injury.
Oddly enough, I don't feel like we're trying to hit a quota with that. It's just, ironically, that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, I feel like that just kind of happened. Like they're both the cop figures who kind of have a temper, who have somewhat of a slight rage issue. It's just that Misty is actually a cool person, and Madani is just kind of cold, like, and hard to empathize with.
Getting back to the fight scenes, we kicked off this season strong in that bar. I was beyond impressed when they did that fight scene in the bathroom where he's fighting those two skilled women and just straight up fights them like they're men. No holding back, no nothing. He slams them through a stall. He gives them both like direct face shots, stabs one of them to a wall, and then knocks her out. Like Frank was going all in on all of them. And John Bernthal broke his hand filming. It was either that scene or the bar scene. He broke his hand and just kept filming because he didn't want to have a stunt double have to get called in. So he kept doing the fight until eventually he ruined his hand and tore some ligaments. And that's why Frank is in a cast for like 3 or 4 episodes after that. And in the continuity of the show, the way they explain that away with him getting a gunshot later on by one of the women assassins. She shoots him in the hand. That's why that woman shoots him in the hand in the show, just to give him a reason in the show to have a cast.
Wow. That's dedication to the craft.
Yes, it is.
I will say though, like back on to stay on the note of the supporting cast, since we've been talking about them for a while, I really felt the absence of Microchip this season. Like, I'm not sure how you would get him back in, but I feel like he added something to season 1, and to have him not show up here in any capacity, it felt kind of wrong.
I don't know if it felt wrong given the subject matter we're dealing with here, because I know him and Frank are genuine friends at this point, but it's not like him and Curtis. Like, they didn't go to war together. They had mutual interests. Like, now that Microchip has his family back and he's like not a wanted man and not getting chased down by shady government people, he can just live his life and not have to get involved. This is Frank, like, voluntarily choosing to get involved with the situation with Amy, and like, had he not done that, I doubt he would have ended up back in New York and even found out that Jigsaw was still alive.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Again, it makes perfect sense that he's not
still alive, but that like he was like out of custody and like rampaging and killing people and robbing banks and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, it makes total sense that he's not there. Something is different about the dynamic, and I think that's it. But hey, we got more Curtis, and I like him.
Oh, I love Curtis. And I like that, again, episode 10, there's genuine stakes and consequences in this show. He's forced to kind of incidentally kill someone. Like, it's not like, and like he says multiple times, it's different than, you know, being in the military when you're ordered to go somewhere and shoot at people. This is, you know, you're back home and you're just shooting at, like, Curtis killed someone for the first time outside of, you know, orders. And
yeah,
that was very different for him, and that kind of leaves a mark on Curtis that will always be there. And again, that immersion.
Yeah, and I like. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I like that. That's not even remotely intentional. Like, again, in keeping with how grounded these shows are. Like, he shot someone in the leg. Usually in a show, or especially in like MCU type heightened reality, we would say, as shot in the leg, yeah, they're fine. Now the guy dies because he bleeds out. It's like, no one meant for that to happen, but that just goes to show you how dangerous this work is.
And I think that fight that Frank has too might be one of my favorite action scenes in the show. Not because of how it's not like crazy choreographed. Not even choreographed, maybe not the right word, but as like crazy thrilling. I don't know. I'm not wording this right. It's not as like almost in a weird way cathartic and fun to watch like the scene in the bathroom and in the bar. It's really visceral and almost kind of Logan-y. And like when you see like Frank getting like tore up by all those dudes in Billy's warehouse, and like his Punisher vest is just covered in blood.
Yeah.
Covered in blood, and he's all cut up and like coughing up blood, and Frank is just a mess, smothered in blood, his own blood. And like you see the lights flicker out and like rock music blares for a second as the lights flash in Frank's face and he can't see anything.
Yeah, they keep that to like disorient him.
Yeah, like that was a really cool scene. I liked how well that was shot. And of course, Frank is able to come back and turn the tide. And then we just yank the rug out from under him as hard as we've ever done in the whole show, where we make him think he's killed those girls. Like,
yeah.
I had to stop binging and just take a break after that. Like, I was right there with Frank. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they made him do this. I was so sure that they went there. And like, I'm not mad that that turned out not to be true and that Billy had already shot those girls and just left the bodies there. But in the moment, that was just gut-wrenching. That I felt for Frank so hard in that moment, just to see like all those poor girls just lying dead and thinking that Frank did it.
Yeah. And
And
yeah, I don't know.
we end the season kind of in a less show-stopping way than I would have expected. Like, it's not the big action extravaganza that the last couple episodes of the first season are.
Yeah, no.
We end with kind of just a simple junkyard fight with him and Pilgrim, and we just walk up to Billy Russo and shoot him. No exchange, no nothing. Frank just walks up to him and just lets Billy talk for like 30 seconds, and then just puts 2 bullets in his chest and walks away.
Which I really love. I really like that because after 2 seasons of this, you get the sense that Frank is just like, I'm tired. We've said everything we could possibly have to say to each other, even if you don't remember all of it. And he starts to say, like, whatever I did to your family, I'm sorry. And Frank shoots him before he can, like, actually get out the apology. I think what's going on in Frank's mind is like, if I let you finish that sentence, then we're just gonna be caught in a loop talking about this again. I just want this to be over with. Bam, you're dead.
I don't even think it's that. I think, like, Frank has made up in his mind, Billy's dead the second he walks in that room. That's why he doesn't say anything. Like, there's no doubt in Frank's mind. Yeah, I've made my choice. It was a mistake to let your sorry ass live. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, we both obviously had kind of a lot of the same issues with the season. Not as good as season 1. Pretty much all the villain stuff just doesn't work at all. But John Bernthal. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, I feel like really it's only that. Because part of why I think this might come off as more negative than it is like, you're right, John Bernthal's great. All of the character stuff with the protagonist is great, but there's only so many different ways you can say that. Like, we've been saying John Bernthal is perfect in this role for 3 years now. So, like, how many more times can you parrot that? So you kind of have to focus on what's new.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of what was new with the season is the stuff that didn't work.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Also, Hawkeye is here. Just my that's there.
The soundtrack also I want to mention.
So yeah,
That was really stellar.
Yeah, I liked it for the most part.
Okay, I think that's pretty much all we got. This will more than likely be our last Netflix season. Oh wait, no, we still have Jessica Jones season 3 coming.
So
No,
yeah, that one.
State, I believe, but that will be our
So
last.
for now, that one's coming. Oh, sorry, I think I'm lagging behind him.
Oh no, you just cut me off, so I thought I'd let you talk.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah. We might do a spoiler cast for Jessica Jones season 3, depending on what that ends up being. But yeah, I enjoyed this season a lot, despite the issues I had with it.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it for the most part. Like, I'm glad I watched it.
All right, this was our review, well, spoiler cast of Punisher season 2, and we shall see you guys later.
Bye-bye.